You've been watching Summit University Forum with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom.
We have a very eager audience here tonight at Summit University, and I know some of our students would like to ask you a question or two.
Sure.
May we do so?
Of course.
Can you describe how a concept is formulated, turned into propaganda, and then ends up on someone's bumper sticker or in a newspaper? What's the step-by-step process? The other thing is, how close is the Politburo to the actual propaganda creating process?
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the 007 incident was notable in the fact that it took a long time before the Soviets responded to it, and then the military took the lead in terms of explaining what had happened rather than the political organs, and I wanted to know why that actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the propaganda concepts are not being developed. They had been developed long time ago. There's nothing basically new in the concept of overall propaganda methods and goals. The ultimate goal, however ridiculous it may sound, or primitive or simplistic, is the world domination. Many experts in foreign policy would ridicule my opinion, but this is what it is. I saw it with my own eyes. I was a part of that. So, and my father was, I think I mentioned that before, he was an inspector of land forces. He traveled all over the world where the Soviet troops were stationed. So he knows perfectly well that the troops are not stationed there to collect harvest for Cubans or to help Afghanis to develop the hordes of cattle or goats. They are there for one purpose, world domination. The concepts, the immediate issues or problems are created, of course, for propaganda purposes, and they end up as a bumper stickers, probably not long, it takes really short period of time. Unlike some other things in the Soviet system, propaganda is one of the things that they don't save money on. And there is a huge apparatus of propaganda experts in USSR. Novosti Press Agency is just one of them, one of the organizations. But apart from them, that there is a Department of Agitation and Propaganda within the Central Committee. There are faceless people, names of whom you will never learn. They are kind of classified. I didn't explain you the methods today because it will take us another day. The methods include such thing as semantic manipulation. The words and expressions are being coined at the rate of 5 expressions a minute by extremely clever, educated experts. And the media outside of USSR obediently repeats this cliché. I give you just several examples, not to take your time, not to bore you to death. Okay, I mentioned one thing, United Nations. The expression was invented by the Soviet propaganda experts, not by Americans. We know perfectly well it's not united, and it has nothing to do with nations. More than half of the delegations in UN do not represent any nation at all. They are disunited, obviously. The United Nations had not been able to solve a single military conflict. Nowhere in the world. They provoked war, yes, they took part in wars, but they didn't prevent expansion of communism, or they did not prevent a single war anywhere. So the true expression, the true term for United Nations could be disunited bureaucracies. Okay, another cliché which was coined in Moscow by experts of propaganda. National Liberation Movement. It's not national because most of the leaders do not necessarily belong to the ethnic group which they lead, number one. Number two, they are unpatriotic and unnationalistic because they obey orders from a foreign country, USSR. Okay? They are trained in USSR, They are paid by the Soviet system, and they work in the interests of the Soviet system. Liberation, whom they are liberating. Who is being liberated? And movement. Movement, we understand, is something which moves, unlike something which is static. National liberation does not move. It's a war. If you call war a movement, probably. But it has nothing to do with the concept of movement in American terminology. It means a legitimate, overt, organized, voluntary movement. Right? I presume your church or your organization is voluntary. Nobody keeps you here by force. Okay, National Liberation Movement is an army of bandits, professional bandits, which are kept within the framework of the movement by force. If they betray, it's like in mafia, they are going to be executed. Okay, another example of semantic manipulation is, free medical aid, for example. You think it's an American democratic expression. No way. The term was coined by the communists long time ago, at the time of Comintern. There's nothing free in this world. Everybody knows it. Least of all medical aid. It's a very expensive thing to render medical assistance to other people. Somebody, sometime, somewhere has to pay for it. Who? Taxpayer. Obviously. There are many other things that are being coined by the Soviet propaganda apparatus. Unfortunately, see, if I call myself a genius writer, for example, Los Angeles Times would not call me that, right? They will call me a strange, crazy Russian who calls himself a genius. Then why the hell they call liberation movements what they call themselves? Just because they are many? See? The logic is twisted. The stickers on the bumpers, I don't know. It depends on the ability of local forces to tow the foreign policy. How close is Politburo to implementation of propaganda actions? Very distant. See, Politburo is a group of self-imposed dictators. They don't really decide anything. The only objective of their existence and their life and their struggle is to stay in power. Unlike American politician who has two objectives. First, to be elected, and second, to be re-elected. The Soviet politician doesn't have the first objective. He does not have to be elected. He just makes his way in the party structure all the way up. Re-election doesn't bother him at all. So the only purpose of his life is to stay where he is and don't rock the boat. They don't make decisions. The decision-making level are the faceless group of experts, as I tried to explain to you. And the Politburo gives only the basic directions, what to be done, and the obedient servants of the highest caliber intellectuals are dutifully developing these things. Some independently thinking progressive academics in the United States think that come socialism they will be able to preserve their integrity and independence. It's wishful thinking. They will become obedient servants of the system that they are trying to force upon you. The Korean airliner incident, from my viewpoint, is not an incident at all. I believe it's a carefully planned and premeditated provocation. I'm not sure whether they did it. They killed 268 people just to get rid of Larry McDonald, but it's feasible. I wouldn't be surprised if they killed more than 60 million of their own men just to implement rotten ideas of Marx and Engels. I mean, what would 268 people matter? Second, it is not a military blunder, and the order was not given by military. Never a single military officer of the highest caliber will take responsibility to shoot a civilian airliner. My father was an officer of general staff of the Soviet army. I know perfectly well what I'm talking about. No officer would take responsibility. He'll be shot tomorrow. Are you kidding? The order was given by a civilian, by party apparatchik of the highest caliber, and I wouldn't be surprised it was Andropov. In any case, Andropov knew perfectly well what went on. The Soviet power structure resembles a triangle, unlike a love triangle in real life drama. It's a hate triangle. The seats of power are party, Communist Party, the elite, of course, not the rank and file party, but the top of the pyramid. The KGB and the military, they hate each other, and each of them hate the other two. The most powerful is the party. This is the real power. The army and the KGB supposedly are servants of the party and the tools, the instruments of their power. But in fact, sometimes they are the power themselves. Andropov belongs to the most hated triangle, the KGB. My father hated KGB because he was military. Both of them, KGB and military, hate the party. Why? Because unlike in the United States, the party is the most adventuristic people. They want to invade countries. They give the orders for all kinds of adventures outside of USSR borders. They know perfectly well that comes war, they will go to bunkers and eat caviar and enjoy life, whereby military will burn in flames of nuclear war. Marshal Grechko was against invasion into Czechoslovakia because he knew that he will have to demoralize his army. And the first two divisions, after facing the reality and seeing that Czechoslovakia is not being invaded by Americans, will get corrupted. So you have to replace them with other two divisions. And if you stay long enough, you will corrupt the whole Soviet army. He said, no, don't invade Czechoslovakia. But Comrade Brezhnev said, who the hell they are? They think they deserve more sausages and butter. So show them tanks. So he did, he obeyed. The KGB, the KGB and the army sometimes are in cahoots against the party. The recent rumor that Andropov was shot by son of Brezhnev is an indication that the other two corners of the power structure were really sick and tired of the Andropov's KGB purges. You know, there were purges. Many people lost their jobs, and some were arrested, and some committed suicide in the span of some 10 months since Andropov was sentenced to power. So that gives you an idea of, well, the Korean airliner incident is premeditated provocation to create an international tension, because the only power on earth which is interested in provoking conflicts and preserving tension is the Soviet junta. That's the only justification of them being in power. If there is no enemy outside, they have to create him. If there is no war, they have to provoke it, to scare the hell out of taxpayers inside, and to keep themselves in power.
What do you think caused this airliner, this plane, to stray hundreds of miles off course?
It's hard to say. I'm not an expert. There are so many theories. One of them is expressed by, I wouldn't say a friend of mine, but I know him. There's another defector, Nikolai Khokhlov, who defected long time before I even joined KGB. He was also a KGB in Western Europe. Now he teaches psychology in one of California universities. He thinks that the Soviet Union developed an ESP, would you believe it, system of influencing the perception and minds of people. And the generators of ESP willpower can be focused on individuals and groups of individuals so efficiently that you can literally focus that beam or whatever it is on a pilot or two pilots or three pilots and convince them that actually they are flying on the safe territory, so there is no need, you can convince them that there is no need to contact the ground-based station, and you can artificially draw the plane by brainwave into the Soviet airspace. Whether it is true or not, I don't know. But I know one thing, that when I was a student and I graduated from Oriental Studies Institute, one of my friends, he was an extremely intelligent Jewish boy. He graduated from the mathematical department of Moscow State University. After 3 years, I returned from India for vacation, and I met him in the during the reception at the Academy of Science, and I say, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm working in the secret research bureau." You know, the secret, which means basically defense industry, they don't have addresses, they have post box numbers. And I say, is it that much secret that you cannot tell me what you research? He said, "You wouldn't believe me, brain waves." And I never saw him again.
Brain waves.
ESP, which officially in the Soviet media is described as a pseudoscience and decadent capitalist gimmick to sidetrack the minds of proletariat from the real issues of class struggle. But obviously KGB takes seriously that pseudoscience.
I know that everyone here has a question that he would like to ask, and I would like to say that we have so enjoyed having you. We can only say we'd like you to come again and continue to speak at Summit University, hopefully in the very near future.
Okay.
Everyone here wants to thank you with all of our hearts for this wonderful, wonderful presentation, and we bless you with all of our hearts too.
You've been watching Summit University Forum with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom.